In this video, I want to share why I decided to buy a used Yamaha XT225. This is a 2006 model, when it came time for me to look for a new dual sport bike. And a lot of it comes down to the fact that I'm a short rider. I'm around 5'5", 28-inch inseam, and this is a low motorcycle. They produced this bike from, I believe, around, well, they imported it into the US, I believe, from around 1987 to 2007. A 20-year span or so, and it's super easy for me to touch the ground on, and it's lightweight. It's around 230 or 240 pounds, plus it has a really good ground clearance. It's unusual to find short motorcycles that still have a good ground clearance. Plus, buying the used bike means that I'm spending half as much as for a new motorcycle. So for me, everything just kind of lined up with this bike. Over the coming weeks and months, I'm going to be trying it out, seeing how I like it, and I'll definitely share that in the form of a review in a few weeks, I would imagine. I think right now what I'll do is I've kind of gone over some of the things that appealed to me about it. I did consider other motorcycles. Let's hop on, take a ride, and I'll just ramble on about the other bikes that I thought were available that kind of interested me. As I've started riding, it kind of makes sense if I'm going to discuss why I bought this bike, to first talk about why I have a perfectly good 1997 Suzuki DR250 SE dual sport in the garage, and I still went ahead and bought another dual sport. Because it's, you know, relatively as bikes go, it's small too. And I've done a whole lot to it to make it more comfortable for me. I've lowered the bike, and I have a video on YouTube about that. You might have seen that. If you're interested in lowering a motorcycle, definitely check that out. And I've really, you know, customized it for me with the oversized gas tank and the luggage rack and the hand guards. Just a bunch of different stuff, and I really made the motorcycle that I wanted. So why now would I be looking at something else? Well, there are a couple of things. Though I've lowered the bike and it's easier for me to touch the ground on, because of the way the lower seat works, it's kind of a dip in the middle of the bike. Makes it good for touching the ground, but I still have to swing my leg pretty high. So there are motorcycles I've checked out, like the Kawasaki XT250 that has a relatively low seat height, 31.5 or 32.5, but it's one of those stepped seats, and a lot of bikes are like that, where the passenger part of the seat is higher. So yeah, where you sit is low, but you still have to swing your leg up over it. I know to a lot of people that doesn't sound like much. Until about 6 months ago, it wasn't for me either, but now, being an older rider at the age of 54, having to repeatedly do that, especially if you're in, you know, tough situations on a trail, it just wasn't a lot of fun anymore. And speaking of tough situations, it wasn't long ago I found myself stuck in this ditch on the DR. Total rider error, man. I screwed up. And so now I'm stuck in this ditch up to the gas tank, boulders, rocks. Because I'd lowered the bike, that also takes away from the ground clearance. So it was high centering on stuff. And it also pointed out to me that with that big tank and everything, it weighs over 300 pounds. Again, that was never a concern for me. Bike height really was never a concern until just recently, because I've been nursing a bad shoulder, and it is getting better, feeling so much better. But I found myself realizing, man, I've got more bike than I need right here under me, and I'm having to drag it out. And in the past, where I just use brute force to get out of stuff, now I'm really having to finesse it. And I began to think, what would it be like with not only a low bike, but a bike that was built small, like the XT. So that really interested me in a bike like this, the XT225. So I immediately began looking at what else is on the market. What could I compare this to? And I think I'll start from like the lowest technology to the higher technology. And probably the thing that relates the most to this bike is the Suzuki DR200. So really, in a lot of respects, it looks about the same. They revised it a couple of years ago, and it now sits a little higher. They're advertising the seat height's over 33 inches, like 33.3 or something, where this is like 31.9. So it's kind of a shame that they did that, but it's new cosmetics. So they made that bike a little higher, but technology-wise, it's really similar. Compared to this bike, the DR200 and the XT225 both have front disc brakes, but drum rear brakes. They're both air-cooled, and they're both carbureted. And they both weigh similarly, I think. Well, no, that might be a little heavier. Where this is 230 or so, that might weigh a little bit more, but I think it's negligible. We're talking two small motorcycles. It also has a decent ground clearance, and I love the looks of the bike. I prefer the looks of the DR. But really, when it comes to buying a new motorcycle, I didn't want to spend close to $5,000 after dealer prep and all that stuff for a DR200. And thinking of a used bike, universally, people that review them say that the DR200 is pretty gutless power-wise. For a lot of what I do, that doesn't matter. It's just all about fun. People are out having a blast on Honda Groms, and there's not much power there. And I had a few years ago a Kawasaki KE100, little two-stroke 100cc that was such a blast for cruising around town. But I do want to go on a little bit longer jaunts. I want to be able to get out in the country, and so I thought that the extra power that this 225 supposedly has would be a benefit. This bike also has a 6-speed, where I think the DR was a 5-speed. So similar bikes. Really, it came down to the power was apparently a little bit better on this one, and so I decided to look this route. Now, before I did get this, I had myself pretty much convinced the next bike up of the line would be Yamaha's XT250, the slightly larger brother to this and the current model. And there's so much I loved about it, I was sure I wanted to go that route. Because it has newer technology, it has electronic fuel injection. That was awesome. It has disc brakes front and rear, that's great. It has the same seat height as this, it's low, it has the same ground clearance. It all checks out good. There were a couple of reasons why I decided to go this route. One being price. I could find a used one of these for, you know, under $2,500 in hardly ridden shape. And the other two things were that this has a 6-speed where the XT250 has a 5-speed. And people that have owned them both have said that the 6-speed is nice to have. Now, I do think Yamaha probably did a killer job of speccing out that 5-speed. They perfectly matched it to the engine. It's not like that's a weak point or anything, but I like the idea of the 6-speed, and then it came to the weight. That bike being around 290, this one being 40 or 50 pounds less. And I thought, you know, if I want a small bike, let's go all in. Let's get a small bike. So that's what I did in picking this one. And that's a similar thing to now comparing it to really probably, well, definitely higher performance motorcycles in terms of engine and in terms of suspension, being the Honda CR250L and the Kawasaki KLX250. You have water cooling on both of them. You have electronic fuel injection. You have disc brakes front and rear. You have longer suspension travel. With those, though, I would have had to lower the bike. If they're coming in at a 34.5, 35-inch seat height, I would have had to lower it. You know, then I'm kind of getting into the territory I was with my DR. It's a heavier bike. I'm lowering it. And I thought, let's just get a bike that is purposely built to be small. And so that's how I ended up with what I'm on right now. My initial impressions after having it for a couple of 100 miles are, I love it for what I'm doing with it. And I guess it's worth talking a little bit about that. I tend to ride just around the countryside, back roads, hit some gravel roads. If there's a cool looking trail off of the gravel, I'll go pursue that. One thing that I realized with my DR was that I set it up for a little bit longer trips. I got that big luggage rack, I've got the big tank, and that made it super awesome that I could go for days without having to fill the gas tank, without having to think about anything. But really, I realized, you know, I'm packing around that extra fuel, and I'm not doing trips with it. It's just day trips. I'm just cruising around. And so while I'd set it up to be a cool, you know, semi-adventure bike, well, an outfitted dual sport, really all I need is a small motorcycle that I can hop on, that starts up, that I can just jet around the country for 150 miles or 200 miles in a day and have a blast. And so this is really the, you know, the bare bones kind of example of that. Small bike. My intention is to stay pretty stock with it. I have a tendency to go, okay, I need new fork springs. It'd be great to get a shock or get it reworked and that kind of thing. And I think I just want to keep it simple with this, do simple mods. I'll do what I can to help reliability and rideability and durability and that stuff. But otherwise, change the oil, put a plug in it every few thousand miles, and just see where it takes me. So I hope this has been something of a help to you if you're considering different bikes. It's great to buy a new motorcycle. If they had made these new, I might have considered it, but you know, again, it's with so many of these, what kind of gets lumped into the beginner bike category, with so many of them, you're going to find pretty clean used examples of people that bought them, didn't ride them a whole lot, they've sat for a couple of years, and you can scoop them up at a good price. Please do check out my other videos on YouTube, and do keep an eye out. I will have a review on this in a few weeks or a month or so. I do want to go over it front to back and just talk about what I've enjoyed about it and what I think could be better about it after I've had some seat time. This is a beautiful day in September. I'm absolutely loving it, so I look forward to watching this video myself in January when it's freezing cold and it's snowing. If you're watching this where it's cold and it's snowing, be aware, relief will come. Have a great day. Get out there and ride. See ya.